We look at what the Baltimore Ravens can change moving forward after the Week 2 loss to the Miami Dolphins with a very special guest next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we returned here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in, making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms, including over on YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. And we're back here. It is a Wednesday edition of the show, and here with us to talk about, again, just what happened in Week 2 against the Dolphins, what changes the Ravens can make moving forward, is Spencer Schultz of Baltimore Beatdown. Spencer, it's been a couple of days since that loss, but there's still so much to figure out.
Yeah, I really don't even know that there is, to be honest. Personnel-wise, everything. Once Marlon Humphrey goes out of that game, things change. The Dolphins scored 2 very quick touchdowns, had a couple breakdowns in communication, but at the end of the day, Tua played really well. Tua Tagovailoa played really, really well. And Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are 2 of the most explosive players in the NFL. I think that Jalen Waddle is a severely, severely underrated player. And I don't think that's going to be the case for much longer, especially for fantasy football players. So Ravens just got out executed. They had a couple blown coverages and nothing, doesn't necessarily have to be a sweeping referendum. They just got beat.
They did. And I think when looking at your overall takeaway, Spencer, just your overarching, what you saw on offense, what you saw in defense, just what did you see out there on the field on Sunday?
Well, I think they did a really nice job in the first half, putting caps on top of their defense, so to speak. They played a lot of cover 6, quarter, half, where on one side of the field, usually a trips or on a twins, they'll have 2 DBs backpedal. The corner and the safety will do a dead straight backpedal, keep everything in front of them. On the other side of the field, they'll do a high and a low. A corner will sit in the flat, and a safety will have the deep half. Leaves the middle of the field open is usually where you want to attack, in between the safety and the linebacker towards the half side a lot of the time. And the Dolphins did that a couple times, but the Ravens ended up forcing incompletions, having interceptions. Marcus Williams makes a huge play in quarter, half. And then as the game wore on, and really eventually once Marlon Humphrey went down, by that point they had been forcing the Dolphins to check down a ton. And they were moving the ball, but it was methodical and, taking some time. Obviously offensively, they weren't able to go out execute in some short yardage situations. And that's going to be the big takeaway offensively, despite having a really nice game, scoring 4 touchdowns offensively. But then get the ball back. And again, it was Pepe Williams, Kyle Hamilton, and Robert Worley and Jalen Armour-Davis. And a couple times they just didn't cover Tyreek Hill or didn't give help where help was needed and blew assignments. So I think that any team that ends up relying on 3 rookies and maybe kind of a jag, just a guy off the street, and Worley, sorry to say that about him, but there's a reason he's kind of not really been starting the last couple of years. Not a peak player. He's certainly an NFL player, but I digress. In a new system, in their first home game, it's really loud. They're all fired up, and Kyle Hamilton kind of doesn't think, oh, I'll take the low-hanging fruit. There's something in front of me. I'll jump at that. Instead of thinking, oh, I have Marcus Peters over here trying to run one-on-one with Tyreek Hill possibly in his first game in 18 months. Just didn't have the wherewithal to think about that in his first game. I'm sure he'd like that one back. Then the Ravens, I would have to ask a coach or a player what happened. I can't discern what they were trying to do. What they ended up doing was doubling Jalen Waddle at the line of scrimmage and trying to carry the seam with him. Jalen Armour-Davis is left alone with Tyreek Hill on the other side. And I guess that was the call, because John Harbaugh was yelling it in at the sideline, and I think he would have called a timeout if it wasn't the call and they weren't lined up right. And it looked like Jalen Armour-Davis kind of just didn't think and thought it was going to be quarter, half or something, thought he was going to have some safety help over top to an isolated receiver. He didn't, and Tyreek Hill runs right by him and scores a touchdown. So, I think if Marlon Humphrey doesn't have to miss the final couple drives there, I don't think that happens. I think they can go win that game. And if they were able to convert in one of those short yardage situations, then they probably would be able to. And it really looked like it was more so Morgan Moses and Patrick McCary, not really Linderbaum and Powers and Zeitler, but those two were really getting blown off the ball. Josh Oliver getting blown off the ball at times. So those two things, those two kind of specified areas on offense and defense lost them that game.
Yeah, and you can look to so many different aspects that you could pin some or most or even all of the blame on. I think it's a combination of a lot of different things, but part of it was the fact that the Ravens they were bare in the cupboard at the cornerback position at the end of this game. They had Marcus Peters, who hadn't played in 611 days. You mentioned the impact that Marlon Humphrey had not being in the game and just how the Dolphins are able to take advantage of that. But Spencer, with some of the other positional groups, we did see the Ravens bring in a couple guys for visits on Tuesday, and Jason Pierre-Paul and Blake Martinez. Nothing at the time of this recording has happened in terms of signings, but how would you like the fits there? I know we talked about Jason Pierre-Paul a couple months ago when he had his first visit, but what's your overall thought process with those two?
Well, JPP has had a lot of wear and tear on his body, and people will talk about the fireworks incident, things like that, but he's also had 2 hernias. He's also had, I believe, a shoulder surgery. He's also had a severe ankle injury. He, I think, had a cracked vertebrae in his neck as a result of a car crash. Came back and played through those injuries. The dude's a warrior. So if he is healthy and you can get him, hey, if you can get 4 games of healthy Jason Pierre-Paul, number one, I think the biggest thing it does is allows Justin Houston to play fewer snaps, and then you can maximize him a little bit more, prevent him from getting injured. They're desperate in that room right now. After watching Beagle go down, after watching Means go down, Tyus Bowser not going to be able to come back for at least until week 4 is over with. So going to take some time there. You've got David Ajabo. They tragically, obviously, lose Jalen Ferguson, who was primed to take a lot of snaps. So they are not in a good spot there. I think they would have been served a little bit better to maybe have Malik Harrison play that role full time through the entire summer, especially once some injuries and other things started to happen, then maybe should have really rotated him there. So if he can go give you 20 snaps a game of average play, then I think you're in a much better spot. But nonetheless, it's not bringing in a dynamic playmaker at this point. Otherwise, he would probably be on a roster already. And then Blake Martinez, they have a hole in the linebacker room because Josh Ross is on the IR now, has a foot injury, I believe. So Martinez, a guy that has played in some pretty darn good defenses, played some really good football over the last 2 years. A little bit surprised to see them part ways with him. Can definitely thump. I think he would be a little bit of an improvement over a Josh Bynes coming downhill and playing in the run game and some of those things. Josh Bynes has had some struggles, definitely, I would say, over the first couple of weeks. I think they're going to keep trotting Patrick Queen out there, who's been up and down as he has been throughout his career, but definitely made some plays and has some ones he would take back. So Martinez, a very competent veteran who knows how to go thump, knows how to go fit and fill and occupy gaps and go end plays. So I think both of those would be nice signings. The Ravens are very, very, very tight against the cap. They really don't have money at this point, and they don't really have a lot of avenues to create cap short of really, from what I saw, releasing Marcus Peters would be the only thing, unless someone's just going to straight up take a pay cut. So not sure where they go in that direction, but definitely need some reinforcements, especially at the outside linebacker position.
Yeah, and do you feel like the Ravens could potentially have to go to a situation where they rely on Jeremiah Mooners on their practice squad right now?
Somebody's going to have to play the snaps. You can't roll in. They can kick Calais Campbell out a little bit. They can kick out, I guess Justin Matabike, Brent Urban a little bit, but feels like you're kind of asking those guys to play outside of what they're comfortable in, considering where you had them all summer. So I think they have to bring someone in and they have to elevate someone. Moon, if they don't sign Pierre-Paul, probably plays in this game and probably takes snaps.
Yeah, and I think that we will see likely some changes in that outside linebacker room over the coming days, regardless of if it's a signing or whatnot. And coming up in our second segment, we're going to be diving into some changes the Ravens can make on the offensive side of the ball. So be sure to stay tuned. We still have a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, though, I do want to tell you a bit about LinkedIn. And as you gear up for the fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs are here to make it easy to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. And for me, I've used LinkedIn for a ton of stuff throughout my life. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond, the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. You have simple tools you can use like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1, delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. As you know, every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your jobs for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back here with our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with Spencer Schultz of Baltimore Beatdown. And Spencer, in that 42-38 loss, a lot was made of the run game. And we talked a bit about it throughout the last week or so, where the Ravens didn't have a great performance on the ground against the Jets. Against the Dolphins, you have Mark Andrews out yards per carrying Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake on his one carry for 3 yards. It just doesn't seem like they can get anything going on the ground. How do they change that, in your opinion? How do they fix that run game?
I think it's just going to take time. The tackles are getting beat up a little bit. They played a defensive front that is super stout and gave them problems last time they played. I think that they need time to work on those zone concepts they're trying to implement more. Zone concepts do take a lot of continuity. We saw instances where Mark Andrews and Josh Oliver would be combo blocking, and usually someone is supposed to climb to the second level. So I would say they didn't climb to the second level, letting linebackers kind of get free reign. So I'd say the quickest thing they could do is probably activate Nick Boyle over Josh Oliver. I don't think that Ronnie Stanley, I'm not going to count on him to come back and be a dynamic run blocker over the first month he's playing football games. But down the road, he is more athletic. He is stronger functionally in the run game than Patrick McCary. So maybe after a month or so. But right now, they just need to keep taking snaps together. Roman could get a little bit more, creative. It always falls on the coordinator. But when both of your tackles are kind of getting their butts whipped, and maybe you don't really feel like running Lamar Jackson a ton, then the run game's going to suffer. So I think at this point in time, they're doing a good job protecting Lamar Jackson. They're doing a good job pushing the ball down the field, creating explosive pass plays, all of those things. They're a passing team right now. So I think that's kind of putting people's minds in a little bit of a blender, but they are. They're a team that needs to throw the ball right now. The run game will come to some degree in time. It's hard not to have confidence in Roman. Lamar Jackson does carry so much weight, but you got to be kind of happy. And I'm sure Lamar Jackson, they probably don't want to risk, getting on his bad side by saying, okay, we're going to run him 20 times a game and have him get frustrated when he's playing for a contract, regardless of if that actually would impact his value or not. But hey, he put on weight for a reason. He probably wants to stay healthier. They want to keep him upright. Throw the ball all around the yard. They have been. It was week 2. They wanted to go run the ball in short yardage situations and prove a point. They've done it before. They've called some quarterback runs to win some games against the Seahawks, against the Chiefs, against a bunch of different teams. And I don't know, they just got their butts whipped and the Dolphins sold out for it. So if you want to go for it, maybe you sprinkle in a little bit more kind of big boy play action and some waggle and some boots and things like that. But hey, maybe if they go do that and the Dolphins have a beat on it and stop that, then you say, why didn't they run the ball? So it's really easy in hindsight. I think right now this offensive line, just like I said, needs snaps. Nick Boyle can help. And you hope that Ronnie Stanley by, the bye week is kind of playing at full force and able to go improve, because McCary, for everything that he is as a pass protector, just isn't a big, strong, heavy, functionally stout guy trying to move people off the ball.
Yeah, and one of my keys for the game on Sunday, and honestly for the whole season, Spencer, is for them to get into second and short, third and short situations. What we saw in the game on Sunday, they didn't have a great third down percentage, just 30%, 3 of 10. Fourth down, they were 1 of 3, and the 2 fourth downs they missed on cost them big time. One at the Miami 1-yard line and another one in Miami territory towards the end of the football game. They give Miami the ball back there. Both on these quarterback sneak type plays. One was a missed exchange snap between Linderbaum and Jackson. The other one, it just feels like Lamar Jackson, for as good as he is in so many different areas, has not been able to get down the quarterback sneak. And this has been a theme, not just in week 2, but throughout the course of his career. So how can the Ravens be better in those third and short and fourth and short situations?
Continue to let Mark Andrews do the quarterback sneaks. The Colts would bring in Jacoby Brissett to do quarterback sneaks in lieu of Phillip Rivers. some guys, and Phillip Rivers being one of them, just don't have it in the quarterback sneak department for whatever reason. I can think of instances, the Titans playoff loss at home just prior to, or excuse me, the year prior when they're trying to beat the Browns to make the playoffs and win the division. They try to go quarterback sneak. Lamar Jackson tries to jump over the pile and the ball gets knocked out, and should have been a 101-yard return touchdown for Jabril Peppers that changes the complexion of that game. For whatever reason, it feels like he's unable to just really get low and drive and sneak himself past. I'm not sure if it's his build or what the heck it is, but like you said, that's kind of his Achilles heel. The one thing that he can't do very well at all, I would say, is a quarterback sneak. So Mark Andrews comes in 6'5", 260, and moves the pile forward, gets the first down. I'm comfortable putting him under center. I feel like he's a nimble, player who constantly executes. So throw him back there or run some play actions or, hey, I guess continue trying to hammer the nail that's stuck until you figure it out. So, it stinks to lose that game in part because you couldn't convert those. But at the same time, now you can go back and correct those mistakes, hopefully, and move forward from them. So I don't consider anything that happens on a football field a mistake until you do it 2-3 times in a row. Then it becomes a mistake as opposed to a lesson. So I think there are lessons to be learned. They want to run power in some short yardage situations. And, hey, maybe you need to put Daniel Faalele in at right tackle or run the ball directly behind Daniel Faalele, who is 6'9", 380 pounds, and can certainly create some horizontal or vertical movement when he's down blocking. So a couple minor tweaks, but hey, they need to figure it out. This offensive line has a lot of new parts to it, including, McCary now being left tackle, Linderbaum at center, Morgan Moses at right tackle, and any offensive lineman or offensive line coach will tell you the number one thing that an offensive line needs to be successful is continuity. So I think that it was a very hard learned lesson and something they need to improve at. Otherwise, then they're going to struggle.
Yeah, and I know when you mentioned Greg Roman, and this is not a coordinator firing question, don't worry. I think when you look at maybe if some struggles happen and we're in week 8 or something, maybe, but that would be a pure scapegoat situation in that situation. But for now, Spencer, what have you seen from Greg Roman so far through his first 2 games as the 2022 offensive coordinator? And are there any areas you'd like to see him kind of change as the contest move forward?
Well, you go look at the Jets game, and they did struggle on the ground in that one, but they're able to push the ball downfield quite a bit. They're able to complete some deep balls. They've been very effective in the red zone passing department. Feels like they've been cognizant of how to get receivers in space in some isolated situations, using ISO, still allowing Mark Andrews to get one-on-ones against middle-of-the-field defenders, aka linebackers and safeties. We watched them struggle with operations in week 1. They say, hey, we were putting in a man call and a zone call. And then what do they do in week 2? They go out, get to the line quickly. Lamar Jackson has full autonomy. Pre-snap is changing plays. It feels like they're in control. They're much better pace. So to improve the offense, again, I just think they need a little time. They're still not as healthy as they'd like to be. If J.K. Dobbins comes back and plays anything close to what J.K. Dobbins has been, both at Ohio State and in his rookie season for the Ravens, you have a dynamic playmaker added back into your offense. If Ronnie Stanley plays 80% of Ronnie Stanley, then you have a Pro Bowler as opposed to an All-Pro. So continuing to get those guys back, maybe Nick Boyle, like I said, can come in and help too. And these receivers, it feels like, have been successful. Rashad Bateman looks incredible, looks like he is that guy right now for them, someone that they have needed desperately that can go line up against a top corner like Xavier Howard and take a 5-yard slant to the house, something we have not seen in quite some time for the Ravens. So I think their offense is playing well. Go look at any advanced metric, and they're in the top 5 in anything aside from rushing. And they still have that kind of wild card to say, okay, could we use a big gain on the ground? Okay, well, then we'll run Lamar Jackson once, do a little, bash, do a little bit quarterback power, something like that. So I don't know. This offense needs to continue integrating likely in more. Devin Duvernay now has a concussion. James Prochet is still nursing an injury. So they're going to be relying on Demarcus Robinson as like their wide receiver too if Devin Duvernay has a lingering effect of a concussion. So that's not great. That's not fun to work with, I would say, as an offensive coordinator, especially going into week 3 and going into playing a road game and then a home game against the Buffalo Bills. But it's the cards they've been drawn. So keep operations tight, keep Lamar Jackson upright, overly protect him in the pass game. And I think you'll win enough games to get to the point where you get all those injured players back and integrated in and can hopefully go make a run on what appears to be a little bit softer second half schedule.
Right. Getting those guys back is going to be so key for them. And speaking of guys they're getting back, they got back Marcus Peters on Sunday. We'll dive into the defensive changes they can make coming up here in our final segment. So be sure to stay tuned. We still have a ton to talk about here on the show. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about BetOnline. And BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. You can find all the latest football developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. It's the fastest and easiest way to check out on all your favorite sports and events, including the MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to the website today, use mobile device to learn more about the trends in action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back here with our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Spencer Schultz of Baltimore Beatdown. And Spencer, on the defensive side of the ball, we saw miscommunication and quite a bit of it on Sunday. Now, a lot of rookies were playing in that game in the secondary. And look, some of that's to be expected for guys playing in their second ever NFL action major snaps. A question here from Afida Foy says, hello, Kevin, in your opinion, how can the team fix miscommunication problems on the field? Thanks for the show and have a nice day. So, Spencer, I'll flip it to you. How could this team fix those miscommunication issues? Because this goes back to last year, but I think that, again, with how much youth they had in that secondary on Sunday, it's not super surprising to have one or two of those. It just was so costly.
It definitely was. And I would say a simple fix is not playing the Dolphins. You can't really go play man against them. You can't go man up Tyreek Hill one-on-one. You can't go man up Jalen Waddle one-on-one, particularly with those younger players. And if you're able to play a little bit more man coverage or a little bit more match man against guys that aren't going to run right by you, then that's going to make their assignment easier. Hey, go play this type of leverage, funnel them to the safety if you can, but it's your man. Go cover. That's going to prevent blown coverages, but can you still go win doing those things? They need Marlon Humphrey back. He comes out of the game. They are completely and utterly incompetent. I don't know what else to say. Like I said previously, they did a good job in the first half, playing quarter, half, cover six. Hey, we're going to, give high-low help to the isolated receiver, whoever is the weapon and the isolated receiver. So we're not even putting Marlon Humphrey at times in the position of trying to cover those guys one-on-one. So then you end up seeing a Marcus Williams interception because they high-load one of those explosive receivers, and he runs over top and makes a great catch, and they get the ball back. So I don't know that there's like some big magic fix. You'd like to say that, hey, the rookies will learn from their mistakes. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. That's kind of what makes someone who was drafted into the NFL into an NFL starter. Can you learn from your mistakes? Can you fix it a little bit? Can you communicate better? I think Kyle Hamilton in the first half especially saw him talking constantly pre-snap, checking, communicating, looking all around the defensive backfield, overly communicating. Then the tempo starts to push in the fourth quarter, and there's more inexperienced players in and things of that nature. And they just end up basically blowing two assignments that lead to two touchdowns that were long third down touchdowns that broke their back. And it is what it is. I mean, again, I just don't think in week two there's some grand sweeping way of saying, oh, maybe if we have Marlon Humphrey instead of Robert Worley out there, then you're probably going to be a little bit better off. And just as unfortunate circumstances, they've been dealing with injuries, especially in the cornerback room, aside from really the 2019 season, as long as I can remember. Years and years and years of cornerback after cornerback after cornerback missing time, save for a couple seasons. And it's unfortunate. You're in week two. You're at one point in the game without Marlon Humphrey. Fuller has been out for the season. You don't have Brandon Stevens, the number 3 cornerback. Marcus Peters, like you said, is playing for the first time in over 600 days. Then you're relying on 2 day 3 rookies and free agent signing off the street as your cornerbacks, with Marcus Peters trying his darndest, but it's a tough draw to go say, okay, you have to go play 50 plus snaps against Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill in your first game back. So they're kind of just not in a great spot injury-wise, and I don't think there's too much more to it.
Yeah, and final question, Spencer. Mike McDonald, we've seen 2 games, fourth quarter game plan from him. I know there's been a lot of controversy about just what it was. What have you seen from him through 2 games? What are some stuff you'd like to see him improve upon and change upon?
What we've seen is exactly that. They like to run split safety. They like to play quarters. They like to play cover 6. They're not afraid to dedicate some safety help. And then he's got a really young group. And hey, there's an old adage: if you can't get pressure with 3, send 4. If you can't get pressure with 4, run 5. If you can't get pressure with 5, rush 6. If you can't get pressure with 6, drop 8. They blitz Tua. They blitz Joe Flacco. They didn't. They started rushing 3 in the second half. It feels like he was very amicable to cutting fat, to cutting his losses and saying, this isn't working. So, okay, we'll only send 3. We'll drop 8 into coverage. And Tua still ripped them apart. So I think that he was willing to put his ego aside, which is, I think, a big reason why we don't see Wink Martindale as the Ravens defensive coordinator, that he was continuing to send pressure no matter what, even if it wasn't working, and reached a point of impasse. And then at the end of the game, you go see a guy like Jalen Waddle yank a ball off of Jalen Armour Davis's skull in the end zone and wins the Dolphins the game. So I don't know. He's dealing with, like I said, a really thin corner room. They don't really have outside linebackers outside of Adafe Owe and Justin Houston. So he's probably trying to make figgy pudding out of some, figgy poo. So not sure what you're supposed to do schematically to improve, other than, I guess, just keep things simple. Felt like they tried to keep things simple and ended up getting gashed regardless. So just not a healthy unit in this past one. In the first game, it felt like they were a little more healthy until Kyle Fuller ends up all the way at the end of the fourth quarter. The guy that they were trotting out as a starter tears his ACL. And then you fast forward to another week and your corners are thin, your outside linebackers are thinner, and not sure what much else you can do. Maybe, increase Justin Madubuike's snaps. I don't know what schematically you can do. Like I said, play a little more man coverage against a less explosive group of receivers, because there won't be one as dynamic as Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, hopefully reinforcements on the way for Mike McDonald's crew. But Spencer, that's all I have for you here today on the show. Thank you so much for hopping on, joining me. Tell people what you have going on, where they can find you on social media and more.
At Ravens for Dummies on Twitter. You can find my work at BaltimoreBeatdown.com. You can find the Baltimore Beatdown podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. Make sure to go give Kevin 5 stars. Thanks, Kevin. I'll talk to you next week.
Again, a big thanks to Spencer for hopping on talking Ravens football with me here today. All the links to his work will be in the description down below on YouTube. And if you want to support this channel, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, like the video as well. It does help out a ton. Also in audio form, be sure to follow along anywhere you get your podcasts, so Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, the whole 9 yards. Same show, both audio and video, so you're not missing out on anything there. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at KAllstriker34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be diving into more Ravens content, so be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.